This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 8 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. In today's episode, I'm talking about a topic which is very dear to my heart, and that's about kids who travel. So I've got two perspectives. Once I was a kid who travelled. I was super lucky. My parents really thought that travelling was something valuable for me and for my sister, and took us travelling not often, but as much as they could, and in a really independent way, usually in a camper van or motorhome for a few months at a time where possible. And that totally shaped who I am today. I'm sure it's the reason I'm a travel blogger and have this travel podcast. It shaped me in lots of ways, I think. I always remember having this vast amount of general knowledge for geography. It served me well in quiz nights and of course in school through the years. And just that perspective of knowing that people speak different languages and have different customs and are different in lots of ways, which is hard to realise otherwise living in a country like Australia far away from everywhere. And I think that's really served me well. So that's one side. And now, of course, I travel as a parent with my kid, who at the moment is a 6-year-old boy. He's just turned 6. And I can see that it shapes his character in so many different ways. And his experiences of travelling come into his everyday life all the time. If he's playing with his cars or toy planes or something, then he will be flying them from Keflavik Airport in Iceland back to Heathrow or Gatwick or somewhere. And just that general knowledge is amazing to me, along with all of the other things he's learnt. So today I'm going to talk first to a couple of parents about their experiences travelling with their kids, and then I thought I would turn the tables a little bit and talk to some kids about what they think about travelling. So I hope you enjoy it. It's been quite interesting. And I'm not sure if you can hear those really noisy birds in the background. I tried to wait until the birds stopped chattering away to record this, but they just wouldn't. So that's a Saturday morning in Australia with birds. That's what it sounds like. All right, now my first guest today is Mike Campbell from Live Immediately. So he's a fellow Aussie who's currently travelling around the US on a strict budget. He's house sitting with his family as much as possible. So he's travelling with a 4-year-old daughter, and has learnt a lot during his time travelling with her, especially about the differences travelling without kids and travelling with them.
So we're on this year adventure with my wife and our daughter, Andy, who is 4.5 years old. And previously, before Andy being born, my wife and I would travel a lot. Been to America. We did a road trip from Austin, Texas to New York for a month in 2009. We've traveled around Thailand. We have taken Andy to Bali before, but that was a really kind of short stay. It was 2 weeks, I think. So this trip for a year, and we started off in New York City, and my wife and I had been to New York City before, and now we're in New York City in wintertime around Christmas. It was a mild winter, but it was still cold. And 3 weeks before we came on this adventure, I was down at my parents' house in Sydney, up on a ladder in their back patio, cleaning their roof for a Christmas party, in bed with bare feet, and fell off the ladder and broke my left heel.
Oh no!
So I started my adventure with a moon boot and crutches.
No. Oh, and crutches. Oh,
and crutches hobbling around New York with a 4-year-old in the cold coming from Australia. And it was crazy, and it worked out okay. It really did. In hindsight, having crutches traveling was probably a benefit, because when you get off the airplane and on the airplane, everyone there is there to help you. And in America, if you're slightly disabled, or anything like that. Everyone helps you. They're a great, or everyone that I've come across is anyway.
Oh, that's handy.
But how we traveled New York this time compared to when we were childless, obviously we went to different places. Toy shops were the big thing. We would go to the National History Museum, which I loved all these things as well. And that's the great thing. Sometimes I feel that people think that kids are going to be a hinder with their travel, and they're like, I don't want to do that because we've got these kids and it's going to be really hard and blah, blah, blah. You know what? You probably have completely different experiences with your children. Another thing that I've noticed with Andy anyway, and don't get me wrong, it is different traveling with a child than it is with children. So we've obviously got two adults that can look after this one person. Traveling with 4 kids, that would be a whole nother ball game.
Very true, yes.
But one thing I noticed is they are so much more resilient than we think they are. They can go for longer. Andy would have like little cat naps in taxis, and then she'd be kind of up again. And just like at home, we would kind of carry around that get out of jail free kind of backpack that you take when you take your kids anywhere, which has like all their favorite toys in it and things like that. Yeah. But when you travel with a child, they're experiencing these new things as well. And so like when we travel, you know how we always seem to get that extra bit of energy, and we can kind of just keep going and going and going. So do the kids that I have found that as well.
That's a good point. So true.
Another thing I love about traveling with Andy is the conversations that start around her and the people that you will meet, or other people that will have a child and the kids start to talk together. Here in Clam Lake, we're in a town in the middle of Wisconsin, in the Northwoods of Wisconsin, in the middle of a national forest, where there's 37 people, the youngest being 37. So we were really conscious that Andy wasn't going to have any kid time, like with little humans her age.
Oh, true, yeah.
So we deliberately then were like, okay, we obviously searched around, and we found that in a town called Haywood, which is about a 50-minute drive from here, they have a beautiful library down there, and there's story time on a Tuesday. So we would take her down to that, and then we'd meet people there, and that would kind of start new conversations. We then also enrolled Andy into Nordic Kids, and the best way to describe Nordic Kids is nippers for cross-country skiing.
Perfect. Excellent.
And that was on a Sunday from like 1 to 3, I think it was. And she had time with her little humans there and learning how to cross-country ski and all that kind of thing, which she really loved.
Oh, fantastic.
But then in Clam Lake, when I would be out having a coffee, and it'd only be the locals who are all over 60, she loved it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And
so sometimes these, what I've really learned is sometimes we place our own kind of fears on our kids. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm worried that this is going to happen, or she's going to act this way, or she's going to act that way. And it's not that way. And it really hit home one day when I was like, Andy, don't do that in the snow. Snow's going to get in your boots, and you're just going to complain you have wet socks. And she looked at me and she's like, Dad, I never complain. And I was like, you're spot on. You don't. You have never once complained about the cold or being wet.
Yeah.
You complain about getting dressed and eating any meal, 100%. But you never.
But actually, not about having wet socks or anything. So. Yeah, she was right.
So that was one thing that I've really learned with kids is when traveling, or just in general, really, just treat them like you would kind of any travel companion.
Yeah, they're so, and I think you're right. Like, it's interesting how you say they have, just like us, they get that extra energy from seeing new places and stuff. And my son's exactly the same. Like, at home, he's very routine driven and he's exhausted at the end of the school day and all of that. But when we travel, it's like a different child, and he's, he can. Like, he's more resilient than me, I think. We'll be in an airport in the middle of the night and he's in a much chirpier mood than I am.
Yeah.
And and I'm like, but he's great. Yeah, they're really so much better than we think. I enjoyed hearing about Mike's experiences with his daughter Andy, and it's a common theme that I hear from so many travelling parents that the kids are so much more resilient than we think they are. And I think travelling teaches them even more resilience, and it's a great life skill. Now, my next guest is Tim Leffel, who I've spoken with before, and this time we're talking about moving abroad with his daughter, who was, I think, 11 or so at the time when they moved to Mexico for a few years. Before we hear from Tim, I did want to mention that Tim also told me in another part of our conversation that he gets the best stories for his travel writing when his daughter is travelling along with him. Just like Mike was saying, having a child there is just a great way to start conversations. And I've certainly found that travelling with my own son as well. People are much more likely to come and have a chat with you if you've got a child. And I think that's a real bonus that we forget about sometimes. Now, this is what Tim's daughter had to say, or her reaction when it was announced that they were heading over to Mexico.
Well, I got to say, when we sprung this idea on her, she was pretty much as upset as I've ever seen her, because we grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, and she had lived her whole life there. I mean, we had lived there, my wife and I, for 11 years, but she had lived there, her whole life. And so we basically said to her, honey, we're selling our house. We're moving away from here. We're going to Mexico, and we're not coming back here when we're done, because we already knew we were going to move to Tampa, Florida later, because that's where my mother-in-law lives, and that's where we are now. Right. So all that, we hit her with all this at once, because it was kind of like when you pull the Band-Aid off, you might as well just do it all. And so, that was a tough time, because especially when we had moved all of our stuff out of the house, and we're standing there in the empty house getting ready to go. That's kind of depressing, and especially when you're 10 or 11 years old, and that's where you've spent your whole life. So that part was really tough. But I knew that kids are very resilient and adaptable and whatever, and I knew as soon as we actually started doing it, it would be fine. And it took her 2 or 3 weeks to get in the new groove and a new place, and then she was fine, and she had local friends, and was getting invited to birthday parties and all that stuff. So it worked out.
Oh, that's amazing.
And now she has close friends in Mexico that she still keeps in touch with, because these days it's much easier to do that. And it's funny. I hear her leaving Snapchat messages for them, or WhatsApp messages where they actually just talk into the phone, and it sends it as a voice message. Yeah. And so they're babbling back and forth in Spanish, and they're rapid fire Spanish, and I hear her, and they're talking to them like that, and they get on these group chats. And so it's kind of cool, because it's much easier to keep your old friends than it used to be.
Sure is. Yeah, no, that's a great bonus of the internet age. And you must be a proud dad when you hear it babbling away like that in Spanish.
Yeah, it's nice. And, she doesn't believe it when we tell her this, but we tell her, that's going to open up her job prospects immensely, no matter what she decides to do. If you go in as a bilingual saying you lived abroad, that automatically gives you a leg up on everybody else.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And 3 years is a really decent time to be really, beautifully bilingual. So
it's funny, though. They know she lived in Mexico. If she goes to another Latin American country or talks to someone from Spain, they can immediately peg it.
Oh, they recognize her Mexican accent.
Yeah.
Such a great advantage for her for the future. And I'm sure she'll thank you one day.
Yeah, I think so. Eventually.
I'm very impressed by Tim's daughter's bilingual ability, and I think that's, as he says, a skill that will stand her in good stead for the rest of her life, no matter where she goes. Now, that was what some parents think about travelling, and that's one perspective, but I thought it might be interesting to hear about what kids think about travelling as well. So I took the opportunity during the school holidays here in Western Australia to have a chat with my son, Mr. 6, and his cousins, Miss 8 and Miss 10. Now, they've all been very lucky in their short lives so far. They've travelled quite a bit. In fact, in this interview, all of them completely underestimate the number of times they've been on a plane, although I guess some of those times was before they can really remember. But it's an interesting chat, I thought. Some of the things are fairly predictably what kids are going to say, and some of them are, I thought, quite insightful. So I will let the kids tell you what they think about travelling. How many planes do you reckon you guys have been on?
I reckon I've been on about 7 to 10 planes.
I think I've been on 8 to 10.
I've been on about 9 to 10.
Oh, that's a lot of planes. What's the best thing about going on a plane, Miss Ten?
I think getting all the food and watching all the movies on the planes probably one of the best bits.
My favourite is watching all the shows and movies you can.
I like watching movies and like playing games on the TVs.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Now, I think Miss 10 and Miss 8, you've been on a plane by yourselves without a grown-up.
Yes.
Was that scary?
No.
Or was it just fun? What was it like?
I thought we were gonna crash, but no. It was actually quite fun. Didn't have to be bossed around by any parents.
Ah, that's an advantage, isn't it?
But the flight attendant's been really mean to me.
Oh, no, that's no good.
Yeah.
You weren't being
They
naughty.
must have been very naughty, the flight attendants.
Maybe they were. That's right. Okay, is there anything bad about going on an aeroplane? Or anything you don't like as much?
That I think always we're gonna crash or something.
Do you?
I think the toilet flushing.
Yeah, me
The
too.
toilet flushing is actually very noisy. Toilet flush is like, that's why I always need to go, always block my ears, I'm getting ready, and then just flush, and it's like, ooh,
It's
so
a bit
noisy.
scary, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
it's that real vacuumy kind of...
Yeah, it sounds like a loud vacuum.
Yeah, that is a bit scary, that's true. Okay, what about when you go to a different country? What do you like about going to a different country?
To experience new foods, new sights, new differences, new people, new clothes, new dancing, new traditions. And like it's just really fun because you've never experienced that, and you get to experience what it's like to be in another person's life.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a really good explanation. What about you, Miss 8? What do you like about going to another country?
You can learn languages, like language schools, and it's like, just say you went to Bali or something, you get to go in pools and slides, and it's really fun.
Yeah.
And meet new people.
What about, can you guys say anything in other languages?
Yes.
Yes.
What can you say, Miss 8?
I can say in Indonesian, terima kasih means thank you, and bike means good.
Aha, very good. What about
I
you, Miss
know
10?
Indonesian because I've been learning it for 7 years, I think.
Wow.
I also know some Italian words that my dad taught me.
What about you, Mr. 6? Can you say some words in another language?
Yeah, in German.
What can you say?
Good is gut, and I forgot all the rest.
I heard that. What about, how can you say good morning?
Guten Morgen.
Very good. That's very nice. And how do you say bye?
Tschüss.
Yes, you know lots of words in German, I think. All right, now I've got another question. If you could go to any country in the world, where would you like to go? Okay, Mr. 6.
Iceland again.
Ooh.
And London.
Oh, okay. Why would you like to go to Iceland again?
Because they were puffins and they were so cute and funny, but they kept crashing underwater.
Yeah, they're not very good at flying, are they?
Yes.
And why would you like to go to London again?
Because we saw Buckingham Palace. That's all.
That's all. Good enough. Okay, Miss 10, where would you like to go?
I would like to go to America because there's lots of things to do, like including Disneyland, but I'd also like to go to like Queensland and Bali again because they've got Waterbomb Park and Dream World and Movie World and Sea World and everything, and they're all really fun.
Cool. Yeah, that's true. All right, Miss 8, where would you like to go?
I would like to go to Italy because I've never been, and my dad's dad came from there, and I'd like to go to America to get American Girl clothes because I've got an American Girl. And I also like Queensland because it is like there's like SeaWorld and Dream World, and that's really fun. Yeah, I like it. I would like to go to Italy as well. Bali's fun as well. You get to go to Waterbomb Park. I know.
And I would also like to go back to Germany again because I went to Legoland there. Legoland, the small one in Berlin, and Legoland, the big one in I don't know where.
Oh, yeah, I can't remember the town either. In the south of Germany. It's at a funny little town that doesn't have anything else there. I've forgotten its name.
Is it that?
Yeah, it's that town. I can't remember the name. I have to look it up. Cool. Okay, I've got one last question. So imagine that some people came in from another country and they don't know anything about Australia, but you guys are born here and you grew up here. So what could you tell them about Australia so they know about it?
I could tell them that they've got lovely beaches, very wealthy country, got lots of things to do and very nice people.
Yes, definitely nice people. All right, who's next? Miss 8, what would you tell them about Australia?
There's nice food. There's good beaches. They're not too, it's not all rubbish on there.
They're very clean.
Yeah, very clean, and it's very wealthy, and it's some words are a bit hard, but other words are really easy.
Can you think of any words that are especially Australian?
Vegemite,
That's a good one.
Aussie,
good day,
Yeah.
good day,
G'day. Yeah.
Wallaby, Hugh Jackman.
Cool. All right, Mr. 6, what would you tell someone about Australia? Not sure? Do you like Australia?
Yes.
What do you like about it?
I don't.
Okay, cool. Anything else you want to say about travelling?
The weather, I really like the weather.
Oh, yeah. We're very lucky. We have great weather.
And as well,
Nice and hot.
sometimes it gets too hot,
Yeah.
but it's nice, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes a bit too hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else you want to tell everyone about travelling? Do you think that everyone should travel?
Yes.
It's
Why?
a good experience, and you might learn other languages.
Yeah.
I reckon it's to know what it's like to be in another person's perspective of their life, culture and traditions, and the way they live to us and their conversations and everything else.
Yeah, cool. Excellent. All right. Thank you, Miss 8, Mr. 6 and Miss 10.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
You're welcome.
I really did enjoy interviewing the kids, and by far my favourite part of that interview was when I asked them if they thought everyone should travel, and all three of them said immediately, yes, a big yes. I think that it's not just that they like the theme parks or other really kid fun things that they do on their travels, but I got the impression they really are learning much more from their travels, and I think it's just so valuable for them. And in a future episode of the Thoughtful Travel podcast, we will talk more about the idea of memory and whether it's important that kids can remember their travels or not, or is it still worthwhile to take a young child on a trip even though they might not remember much of it in the future. So obviously I think it is absolutely worth it, but some people do argue against that. So we'll be having some conversations about that in the future. So thank you very much for listening to episode 8 of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. I would love to hear your feedback on it. So if you have an idea about travelling with kids that you'd like to share, do tweet me at Amanda Kendall, or look up Not a Ballerina on Facebook and leave me a message there. The hashtag you can use is Thoughtful Travel Pod. And if you have sort of some feedback over whether you think it's worthwhile to travel with kids or not, I'd love to hear that, because I can include that in a future show. So thank you, of course, to my wonderful guests. Mike Campbell is at liveimmediately.com. So his blog about living immediately is a really interesting musing on how you don't have to accept the status quo, I suppose. He and his wife and daughter packed up and decided to just spend a year house sitting in America. Not exactly just like that. It took quite a bit of planning, but that's what they're doing, and it certainly sounds like they're getting so much out of it. And my second guest was Tim Leffel. You can find Tim at timleffel.com. And he's also the author of several really great books, but in particular, A Better Life for Half the Price is a great guide to moving abroad and doing it on a decent budget. So similar to what Mike's done, in fact. Finding different ways to live in other countries, have a really amazing life-changing experience, and actually probably save money, or at least certainly not end up financially worse off. And in the show notes, I'll link to a interesting guest post that Tim did on my blog about 5 things his daughter is getting out of living abroad, whether she likes it or not. So as we heard in the podcast, all in all, his daughter did have a fantastic experience living abroad, even if she was a little bit reluctant at first to head there. So as usual, the show notes will be at notaballerina.com/08. Thank you so much to the people who have left a rating or a review on iTunes for the Thoughtful Travel podcast. And if you do have a moment, these ratings or reviews really help share the podcast to a wider audience. It's sitting in the new and noteworthy section at the moment, so it would be great to get a bit more of a boost so that more people can come on board and listen to our chats about travelling thoughtfully. Thank you so much. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.
Jackrabbit FM for your ears.
Who is that? Hi, Podcast.